Yeah, just a little bit about myself. I'm Simon Wong. Actually, I'm not a professor. I'm a lecturer. I'm more like doing teaching, and I do a little bit research just on the side, and I'm also a contributor to Nature. So I feel very proud of about that, and I think that's a good kind of starting point of a discussion today. The fact that when ChatGPT was first available. Actually, mainland China and Hong Kong is also part of China, was excluded, and it's still being excluded from access. So the fact that we don't really have access to ChatGPT without like VPN, we have to do a lot of different things, to access. It's a little bit unfortunate because I see that OpenAI is trying to build an ecosystem, right, with GPT store and everything. So somehow we're kind of cut off from that community. But the fortunate thing is actually Microsoft, which is the investor of OpenAI, offered Azure ChatGPT services. So all the universities in Hong Kong, well, most so the publicly funded universities in Hong Kong actually offer ChatGPT to students and teachers through the Microsoft Azure services. And also, recently the API token services from OpenAI also has become less kind of available for developers in mainland China because OpenAI start to recognize looking at the traffic coming from China, to access their servers, and they're trying to cut that off as well. But there's still some third-party vendors that can provide API token services to both like OpenAI models as well as some other models like Gemini, Cloudy, and all that. So anyway, so that's kind of my background a little bit, and also I'd like to acknowledge Rio and Risha for their invitation, and I feel very fortunate to connect with Rio. We came from very different background, but I think it's really important for people from different disciplines to kind of connect with each other to try to transcend the boundaries of both disciplinary boundaries and also geographical or geopolitical boundaries as well, given the fact that, sometimes we have to just live with the fact that, right now there's quite a bit of tension between US and China. That's probably the reason why we have trouble access OpenAI to begin with. But yeah, so that's kind
Dr.
of,
Wang, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you. Maybe
yeah,
just as a clarification, could you
yeah.
mentioned the term API tokens
Mhm.
to do with ChatGPT and OpenAI? Could you just briefly explain for those who are not aware in this context, what does that term mean? What are API tokens? How they relate
Right.
to that?
Yeah, so basically, there's kind of the usual way of access ChatGPT is you go to the browser, right? So you talk to the chatbot through a user interface, by typing. But there's a different way to access, which is you can also write some program and through API, which is the application programming interface. So you write some scripts through the API. The scripts, all the text will be sent to the OpenAI server, uh, which is where the computing actually happens, right? The large language model is being run there, and then the responses will be generated and come will be sent back through API. So and that costs money. Well, actually, we got a new guest I just admitted. So basically, if you are using OpenAI services through a browser, it could be ChatGPT itself, it could be Poe.com, or if you are writing a program, you can write a script, you can develop a program to access ChatGPT as well. So that's a API token, and when you do that, you still have to pay basically, but it's actually much less expensive than say if when you are like paying like a monthly fee for Poe.com or GPT Plus, especially if we're talking about the entire community, right? So comparing the tokens you pay for like the university community versus you pay up like a premium version for every student per monthly fee, that's going to be very very different. Actually, I've been working with some computer science colleagues in my university. We built our own in-house system to kind of to do customization. And we get the API tokens from third-party vendors because OpenAI does not offer API tokens to countries where they block the access. So we won't be able to get API tokens from OpenAI, but we can get it from Microsoft Azure, and there's some other companies that would provide the kind of API tokens, not just from OpenAI, but from other models as well, like Google, Gemini, Cloudy, and also the open source options like Llama. So yeah, so that's basically what this is about.
So
Yeah.
if you just allow me to summarize, Dr. Wang, and let me know if I'm misrepresenting or being inaccurate. So one, in some countries, one can pay a monthly subscription to a service like GPT-4, for example, or other generative AI applications, and that costs a bunch of money, $20 or more, or maybe a bit less, depending on the
Right,
service. And
right.
then one is given a certain amount of uses or tokens with that amount of money, but you have to pay it every month, and it's pretty expensive for a lot of
Right.
people.
Mhm.
Or the tokens approach is you're paying per use. You have a number of tokens, you pay per use,
Mhm.
and then you're not directly accessing the software, which we can only use without any code
Mhm.
that we need to know
Right.
about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the idea of an API is that you can create a specific application for your specific uses,
Yeah. Mhm.
and you buy a bunch of tokens, so then you
Yeah.
can access something like
Right.
GPT to
Mhm.
run whatever it is you want to run. So
Yeah.
there's different ways of using ChatGPT, and everyone, of course, needs to figure out what's best for them,
Mhm.
depending on where they
Yeah.
live and depending on what they want to use.
Mhm. Yeah, I think in a way, when you think about you use browser or user interface to interact with the chatbot, um, I think humans' cognitive skills or speed is actually quite limited compared to ChatGPT or large language models or AI. So imagine, you can upload one article to ChatGPT through the UI, but what if you want to process 100 or 1,000 or even more articles? If you have API, then you can very easily just, send all the articles over, and you can get a lot of text back, resources back, and you don't even have to read that, right? You can then use some, maybe send it to another chatbot or write some, natural language processing program to do a bunch of other stuff. So in a way, I do believe that with API programming, you can do more. NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang was saying that with AI, nobody needs to learn programming. Maybe 2 decades from now, that would be the case. But I think at least right now, somebody who with programming skill would definitely benefit from AI in a much more powerful way than people just sit there and talk. Well, I'm not trying to kind of I don't really write program myself. I kind of rely on colleagues who can write programming. But I did learn a little bit computer science when I was an undergraduate, so I think that actually turned out to be very, very useful because then at least I know what can be done with programming, so I can start talking with people to explore different use cases. So in a way, I do believe that I kind of think that browser shouldn't be the destiny of ChatGPT or AI, because nobody want to like work on something in our own context and then go to the browser and do copy and paste all the time. So my bet for the future of AI would be everything needs to be integrated. So AI will become part of our workflow, and I think that's already kind of happening. And for that to happen, actually, we have to rely on API programming instead of just rely on like OpenAI to kind of offer us through browser. So yeah, so that's kind of like what we are at. We're kind of at the stage where we haven't really figured out everything yet. So we will have to wait and see, eventually what will happen. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for that. And I'm sorry, everyone, for taking up the
Okay,
time on
sure, no
this
problem.
question, but
I
I
think
wanted to make sure
yeah.
everyone is
Mhm.
clear on what that term means. But please go ahead with your
Yeah.
original talk.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's very important, in terms of how we can leverage the technology. We need to clarify a little bit. So yeah, I think the starting point of our discussion is actually the difference between generic chatbot and the customized chatbot. So when I use the word generic, it's basically we're talking about most of the chatbots, like most of the models like ChatGPT or GPT-4 or Gemini. So all these models have been trained or pre-trained on a large amount of data. So the patterns from those data has been recognized. So whenever you ask a question or make a request, the model will be able to respond. And actually, the responses have been quite impressive, and that's the reason why OpenAI was able to kind of get a lot of users in a very short amount of time. But then we also recognize that, the responses tend to be a bit generic and predictable. Sometimes the quality is not so good, mediocre, so to speak. So that's why people talk about AI literacy, talk about prompt engineering, because if you write good prompts, you give very detailed instruction, you provide examples and input, then the chatbot will be able to do a better job. Which I totally agree, and I think definitely prompt engineering is something we have to teach. We have to kind of cultivate AI literacy among our colleagues and students, because I think people sometimes make decision about AI based on the performance of their AI or based on their conversation with AI, but they didn't recognize that maybe it's not the problem with AI, maybe it's the problem with their prompting skills. So that's actually something, it could be a topic of different talk in terms of prompt engineering. But for me, I want to focus more on like what if we can customize the chatbot? Okay, so when I say customize the chatbot, basically we want to use a system prompt, so to speak. Okay, so the system prompt is a piece of text that we're going to attach to that chatbot. So think of a chatbot that like a generic chatbot. Actually, the generic chatbot also has got some system prompt, but it's hidden from us. We don't know. But I'm sure that some people got like some of the prompt got leaked. So OpenAI or any other companies will have some prompt behind the scene and tell people or tell the chatbot, okay, so when people ask you this, what you should do, blah blah blah. Or if people ask you some like inappropriate questions or something, you have to respond in a certain way. So system prompt is always there. But the idea of customizing the chatbot as a average user, as an external user, is that we are going to write a piece of text and then we are going to have some kind of interface so that the chatbot will always have that system prompt in mind when they start talking to a new user. So that's the idea of system prompt, and that would provide a space for customization. And more specifically, it would allow us to design the workflow and also design some kind of interactive user experience for the user of the chatbot. And in a way, I feel that this is a kind of an underappreciated and underused paradigm or approach. I haven't done much kind of survey or anything, but my general sense is that a lot of people are not necessarily aware of this approach. But of course, there are also a lot of people taking this approach. I can give you a very quick example. So this is the poll.com's interface. And this is actually a new interface, probably updated like a few weeks ago. The older one is just this. So basically prompt bot, and you can name your bot. So you basically name your bot so the bot will have an identity. And that identity is actually defined by the prompt. So this is where you can write, a paragraph or two paragraph, tell the chatbot how the chatbot should behave. All right. And then even, you can upload some files, and that knowledge base will also become part of the, when the chatbot responds to human users, they can consult information from the knowledge source, and you can upload files there. And then there's the greeting message, which is also very important because when you talk to a generic chatbot, the chatbot is just there and waiting for you to initiate a conversation. But when there's the greeting message, the designer of the chatbot will actually can actually like start shape a conversation by taking the first move. So that's kind of the idea. And in fact, Poll.com has already started building an ecosystem and allowing the users, the power users, the designers of the chatbots to monetize. And I know some people from LinkedIn, they make some pretty good money, building the chatbot and offer the chatbot to premium users. All right. So that's kind of an example of how a well-established platform can be used to build customized chatbot, which is actually quite easy. All you have to do is just like name it and write something, and then yeah, so you can get a chatbot right away. So, but OpenAI kind of take a similar approach, but actually OpenAI did this later than Poll.com. Poll.com actually started offering this platform for customization back in April last year. So it's more than a year. And then OpenAI probably started, I couldn't remember, probably started like a little bit later last year as well. I haven't tried this myself, unfortunately, but I kind of heard about this. The idea is you kind of come up with an idea of a chatbot, and then you write a few things, and then the platform will write the prompt for you. So which is a pretty nice feature. And then Microsoft also tried to offer a GPT builder services, but somehow they figure out it doesn't really make much money for them, so they actually shut it down a few weeks ago. So that's kind of so you can see that this approach has been around for quite some time, and actually for the AI developers or company, they're trying to debating, whether this approach will take off or not. There's still a little bit kind of wait and see game going on here. But for me, I feel like that's the future, We can't just rely on generic chatbot all the time to solve all our problems. And when you start teaching people prompt engineering, that's essentially customization, but it's customization on the fly, right? But if we write something as a system prompt, that's like you figure out a good way to customize or tell the chatbot what to do. Why don't you just start recycling it? Why don't you start like giving a new identity to that chatbot? So that's like the approach of customization. For me, I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so that's the first kind of point I want to make. Um, and I want to do a quick demo first, because I think with the demo, then everybody will get a more concrete sense how it works. So this is a chatbot that I made using Poll.com. So the greeting messages say, "Hi, I'm your math tutor. Please type hi to start," just to make sure that you are ready. And the user would type hi. And then this is the message, great to meet you. How can I assist you today? You can tell me the math topic you're interested in, or let me know your current level. I provide a list of topics for you to choose from. So you can see that this is definitely something customized, right? Because if you talk to a generic chatbot, they will never say something like this, right? So the reason why the chatbot behave in this way is because there's some system problem I have written. So that's why the chatbot. I can show you the system problem a little bit later. So what I did is I just gave the chatbot a chapter, a very short chapter from Joy of Mathematics. And this chapter is about teaching people how to compute the square root of a number. Not the more traditional manual way, but it's like what they call it a Newton iteration, which is something new to me. So I look at it a little bit. I mean, the more traditional way of learning is you read, right? You read a chapter, you figure things out. But now I gave this chapter to the chatbot, and then the chatbot would give us a menu. Okay, again, this menu is because I put that menu in the system prompt. And this menu is basically saying, okay, I'm your tutor, but you can decide which role you want me to play. So there's like 6 options here. You can see there's the tutor, more traditional tutor, and the role is to provide direct instructions about the concept or technique, or it could be mentor. Mentor would be to give feedback, or coach is to kind of help people to reflect, or teammate or student or simulator. Well, this is not from me, okay? I didn't come up with this framework. It's from Morley and Morlick. Ethan Morlick is associate professor from UPenn yeah. So he's a leading voice in AI, and he published this paper proposing a framework of how AI can play different roles for teaching. So I kind of borrowed that idea and I put it here. So and then I pick. Oh, actually, I missed the sharing this part. I type one for tutor, and the chatbot just kind of explaining how it works first, and then start asking me some questions. So it's like a direct instruction to teach me how to compute square roots using this Newton iteration approach. And then I have to kind of get along and follow the instruction and answer. Right. So just to kind of go through this, it's a bit tedious. So I say, oh, it's just arithmetic. Maybe you can give me the answer. And then, okay, they gave me the answer. But then they start asking me again, being quite insistent. I have to follow the instructions and go through all that and keep going, keep going. Eventually, I got the answer. Um, and then the tutor will start asking some reflective questions. And this is actually, of course, this question was not, I didn't write it in the system prompt, right? So the large language model was trying to figure it out based on the chapter I provided. So the chatbot asked me, why do you think this method is effective for finding what does each iteration do to improve the approximation? I think by then I already know how this method works, so I kind of wrote this pretty good answer, and then they said, okay, so this is pretty good, blah blah blah. Yeah, so and then I feel like, oh, maybe I asked the chatbot, can you show me how to prove it? Right? So, and then actually there's quite a bit math proof here. This is kind of beyond me. I haven't done the math for a long time, so I haven't checked this. I don't know whether it is doing a good job. So validation is actually a very big issue or concern here. So I share this through the link. Anyone who want to check out can just check out. But anyway, just to demonstrate this can be done as well. And then I tried to go back to that menu. Actually, the chatbot couldn't give me the menu, so I have to type this again, the same chapter. So we go back to this menu because I want to try a different thing. I try a different role, which is teammate. And then they start like play the role of a teammate, and blah blah blah. So I won't get into the details. So this is basically the whole idea of customized chatbot is that when I write the system prompt in certain ways, the chatbot will behave in certain ways. So let me just show you the system prompt so you can kind of know what the behind the scenes story. Um, so you can see here, I wrote the system prompt kind of following the good practice of prompt engineering by giving the context first, right? So you are a patient, experienced math tutor. Your job is to guide users to learn the math concept. The user will first provide a math topic. Alternatively, the user will indicate their level. And if they give the level, then you have to list provide a list of topics for them to choose from, and then subtopics and concepts and blah blah blah. So I can show you that scenario, which is I say year 10 US public school, and then they give all the topics, and then I pick the topic, they give the subtopic, and then the subtopic, and then we reach this stage again. So that's kind of a bit similar. But of course, we are now relying on the large language model, own knowledge about the US public school. But if you want to build a chatbot that's more precise or more reliable, then you can actually put all the topics and subtopics of a specific context into the system prompt for a specific audience. So that's also possible. But for me, I'm just doing it for demonstration purposes. So yeah, so going back here, I also say something like you should display the math by rendering latex codes instead of showing the codes to the users. Because when you teach math, sometimes you need to use graph, right? But the large language model cannot really display graph unless it's a different like diffusion or like drawing pictures. So I just say, oh, how about you just write some codes, right? Some Python or whatever codes, and then you can go back, we can use to execute a code to show the graph. So that's kind of a temporary solution because I think very soon, there will be a more kind of integrated platform. The codes can be executed on the fly. But okay, anyway, so and then I say, okay, you should then ask the user which role to play by listing all the options. So I put all the options here. That's why the options are here. And then for each option, I start to define the scenario, what will happen when this particular option is selected. And for when one is selected, you should do this first, and then do not move on to the next question. So one question at a time, right? Because if you don't do that, they will list all the questions. Yeah, so continue the conversation, adjust the difficulty level of the question based on the performance. So this is kind of the so-called personalized learning, right? So the chatbot should be able to kind of adjust the difficulty a little bit. At least that's what we ask them to do. To what extent they can actually do it, that's actually subject to validation and data, empirical data. And then on and on. So I won't go through everything. Yeah, but that's the idea. So we offer all the options for the users, and then we define all the what will happen when a specific option is being select or has been selected. So that's the system prompt. Yeah, so the input could be a chapter from a math book or could be students' current level. I already showed the two chat history. The different roles for chatbot to play. This is from Molik and Molik 2023. And you can look at, it's a very long paper and it's actually a preprint. So I have no idea when it will be published. But, given Molik's big name, I would still consider it's a good paper. And actually it is a good paper. It's very elaborate, but you can see that their approach of kind of proposing different roles of teaching and learning is actually taking a generic chatbot instead of a customized chatbot. Because if you look at some of the examples being offered here, it's the prompt designed for a generic chatbot instead of writing some kind of system prompt. But this is a great opportunity for us to customize the chatbot, right? Because essentially what the authors are proposing is to give the chatbot some specific roles to play, right? So if you are expecting the chatbot to play the role, why don't we just assign an identity to them, right? So that's the whole idea of doing system prompt. Okay, so just to acknowledge their work because it's their work, but I kind of borrow that idea and I build my custom chatbot. And sorry, I got a typo here. It should be deploy. So it's there are different ways to deploy. Different ways to deploy the customized chatbot. One way is obviously if you use some of the well-established platform like Poe.com or GPT Store. In fact, the chatbot I just showed you, you can also try it yourself, but you have to have a premium account because I built it with GPT-4o, which is only for premium users, which I think that's a limitation. That's the reason why eventually I decided to build my own in-house chatbot customization because if I rely on Poe.com, then even I build a nice chatbot, I can't give it to everybody, right? I have like 500 students or 1,000 students. I can't pay up, everybody to have a premium account from Poe. But if I have my own platform, then I only have to pay tokens based on usage. So that's one reason. Another reason is I tested if you use this space for system prompt, you can only write about 1,200 words. Beyond that, they got a limit. They won't allow you. But when we have our own platform, I talked to my programmer, and he said you can write 12,000, no problem. Yeah. But of course, 12,000 means every time you start talking to a chatbot, those 12,000 words will be sent to the server as tokens. So that can be costly, right? So you have to, kind of bear the foot the bill. Yeah. But anyway, so that's another reason. Oh, somebody asked me about the cost. We can talk about that a bit later, but yeah, so full-time programmer is not cheap. Yeah, it's quite expensive. But I'm quite fortunate because the program I'm working now is I didn't get funding to hire him. It's a more senior people in my university. He just hired him and he asked me to work with him. So yeah, anyway, so I think building an in-house platform should be the future, but probably not people at my level to do it. I think it should be probably more people with more resources. But I'm trying to kind of do a pilot thing and gain some experience, and hopefully it can be scaled up later. So this is one way. Another way, which is actually a more kind of straightforward way, is to just write the system prompt as the first prompt to a generic chatbot, right? And it might work, but it might not. For example, when I write the system prompt as the first uh prompt or at the beginning of the conversation, uh okay, this looks good, right? This looks good. But then I put the chapter here, and then there's no menu. You see, there's no menu here. And I asked, what option do I have? What roles can you play? And they start to make up some roles instead of following the prompt here. So maybe I have to adapt the prompt a little bit. I have to explain, okay, this is a system prompt. You're supposed to follow it, but maybe I need to adapt it. But then it also could become it may just a matter of different models, because when I try Perplexity, um, it works fine. I put the system prompt here, blah blah blah, and then immediately they ask me about different options, and I put the chapter here, and then they offer the options. So Perplexity is doing a pretty good job here. It's quite interesting. I think it would be interesting to compare different models, right? But anyway, so that's the second approach of deploying a chatbot, which in a way can be quite useful as well if you just want to try. And then the third approach is developing an in-house chatbot. I won't talk too much about it. Actually, tomorrow afternoon, I will be giving a talk for my university, and we have a university community in Hong Kong. And that talk, I will focus more on building a customized chatbot. So this is the talk I will be giving, tomorrow afternoon, talking about developing custom Gen AI platform. Um, right. So that's like three different ways to deploy the customized chatbot. Now, the next issue I want to discuss is how to write effective system prompts. I think in a way, I'm still trying to figure it out. If you look at my poll.com account, I have more than 100 customized chatbot being built. So I've been experimenting with this idea quite a bit. But I'm still learning. Um, I think the current framework for writing effective prompts can be quite useful. And the welcome prompt is important. But then in general, there are two approaches. One is branching, which is basically you offer a couple of options and you let the user decide which option to go, and then you define different pathway for different options. And another approach is sequencing, which means you just define all the steps the user have to go through. That would be a different learning experience, which can also be quite interactive. And then the question would become, can we mix both, right? So it might, you can do branching, and then for each branching, for each different option, there could be a different steps to take. or you can take different steps, but then depending on the responses or user behavior, you can go to different branching. But then when the prompts become more complicated, it would really kind of stretch the computing power and the performance of the chatbot of the large language model, right? And also the space of the system prompt, because if you write more complicated prompt, then obviously the poll.com won't do the job because they only allow 1,200 words. And then how about other models, right? So are there any other approaches for writing system prompts? But as I mentioned earlier, this is a paradigm, this is an approach that hasn't been very popular. Not many people have been talking about this, so I won't be able to kind of learn from other people. So that's why, I'm trying to kind of look around and see, hopefully more people can pick up and then start playing with this. Yeah, so that's that. And then I start to try to create a chatbot builder, which I think is another way to bring more people on board. Um, so basically, when I create a chatbot builder, so that's also a customized chatbot. So that customized chatbot will ask the user a number of questions, one question at a time. And then based on the answers of the user, the chatbot will write a system prompt for the user. And I think this approach is probably what happens in GPT Store. But again, I haven't tried it myself. I heard from other people who try it. The idea is that you don't really have to write a prompt. You just tell the chatbot what kind of bot you want, and then the system, the platform will write the prompt for you. And so this is my prompts for chatbot builder. And I think I actually talked to the chatbot a little bit and asked the chatbot to write the prompt for me. So that's why the prompt is not very good. But anyway, so the context, persona, um, ask one question at a time, one, two, three, four, or more, raise one question at a time. The last question, how would you like the user to reflect? Because I want the chatbot to be able to ask the user to reflect. And then once you collect all the answers, you should then generate a system prompt using a template. So I provide a template for the chatbot to build a system chatbot and the system prompt, so that the system prompt can be used to build another chatbot. Yeah, so that's. But then I think I didn't do a very good job for writing the template. So I was not kind of doing very good job. So I only say like scenario 1, 2, 3, but I didn't use branching or something. So yeah, so I'm still trying to work on this a little bit. Um, but I can show you a chat history. So this is our in-house chatbot, in-house platform. So yeah, so basically they ask some questions and I answer question, more answers. And then eventually the chatbot was able to create a system prompt for me. And then I actually give some feedback and then they revise a little bit. So that's how the chatbot builder is working. But again, this is kind of work in progress. I'm trying to share this idea with the audience, and I'm still trying to make it better. Yeah, so that's that. Shall we more or less stop here? Because I can talk a bit more about insights, but that's actually kind of still something I'm working on. So I'd be happy
Dr.
to.
Wang, I
Yeah,
think maybe at this point we'll take some questions.
sure.
And then if we have more time left towards the end, certainly we can
Yeah,
continue, I think, because you've given us a lot of very interesting information. I have many questions, but I like to give the stage to other people. If
sure.
anybody wants to write in the chat or just use their microphone, please feel free to do so. And we'll just wait and see if anybody else has questions. If not, I've written some in the chat and I'll be happy to go step by step. Okay, so maybe I'll start us off, but everybody on this session, please feel free to just interrupt with the microphone or put it down in the chat. So I have some very basic questions. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned with Poe as an option where one can go in, create their own chatbot.
Yeah.
So I have a few questions about that. Firstly, what is the cost per student? So let's say I built my bot and I
Mm-hmm.
want to use it with my students, but as you've
Yeah.
said, it's going to cost me money. So how
Yeah.
much, what is the cost per student per month for that, more or less?
Well, I think Poe is having a pricing system or model is basically 20 US per month per user.
Okay.
And
So that
that
would
would
cost me per
come,
student,
yeah, that would comes with certain amount of token. It's not unlimited,
right?
but usually you won't be able to use up. So I think it's more about yeah, so I don't think it's a feasible way because basically if you use, the option is number one, you use the free model to build a chatbot. Then the model won't be able to execute all your instructions in the
Yeah,
system very correctly. Or you use a premium model, but then only people who are willing to pay can
yeah.
use it.
Or if your institution can afford it, of course.
Right. Or
Uh,
or or maybe
yeah.
maybe the institution to strike a deal with Poe and everybody start
Mm.
using Poe. But I think that's what OpenAI is doing because OpenAI has got its enterprise version allowing people to like upload their data and everything. Yeah.
So essentially, somebody who does not have the budget at this point in time is limited to using the free generic chatbots like ChatGPT that uses the 3.5 model,
Yeah.
which is something that you have to watch very closely. I guess this is less of a question, just I guess for me, more of a general comment is
Mm-hmm.
that the way I'm seeing the chatbots at this point, even with the paid version, right? When you are able to control the data, you're able to put in more input.
Yeah.
It's still not 100% reliable. It may never be 100% reliable, which means
Right.
you kind of maybe want to use it as more of a virtual teaching assistant, right? Which means even with your human TA, who
Mm-hmm.
is usually a graduate student,
Yeah.
they might sometimes get something wrong or give a wrong answer to the student, and
Exactly.
you have to have some mechanism to fix for that.
Yeah.
So I think as far as experimentation goes, even with the free version, I think it's really interesting. I think it's worth trying out. Maybe I'm talking about the free version now, which is less
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
reliable for
Yeah.
small roles. But maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely not something we just want to hand over and just say, hey,
Yeah.
let the students deal with it.
Yeah.
This is not that sort of thing. But the Moloch and Moloch framework really helps. I think if we try and say, we just want to choose one of those roles, which we think maybe the students need extra, like maybe they don't have enough of the team member or enough of the mentor or whatever it is, and then we can just work on that and just have some
Mm-hmm.
have craft and work on very specific prompts and instructions, even for the free version,
Yeah.
where they are just fulfilling that specific role. And we're still overlooking the work of that, but
Yeah.
maybe that way we can create a higher quality
Mm-hmm.
bot,
Right.
even with the free version potentially.
Okay.
Maybe that's a good way to go, rather than expecting it to do all five or all six roles,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I agree. And well, the thing is, I'm not sure about GPT Store, uh, because I haven't tried myself, but Poe.com is definitely one option.
Yeah.
And
And Poe
Poe,
also uses 3.5, by the way. It does
mhm,
access the
yeah,
3.5. It accesses various models, generic models.
yeah. I haven't tried the other features, but you can see that they are very clear regarding which model is free and which is not, right? So this is subscriber access. So some of the subscriber access, that means if you build a chatbot based on this model, only subscriber can use it. Yeah, but like this is free. Yeah, so yeah, so that's kind of the options here. Yeah, there's quite a number of options. Right.
And I wanted to ask you, Dr. Wang, also because you're ultimately an English lecturer, right?
Right.
So the work that you've been doing with these chatbots and with the students, I'm guessing has centered more not in the example you gave us because you knew this would be mostly a
Yeah.
STEM,
Hmm.
but maybe you could share with us your experience, and maybe we'll end with that today. But if nobody has any other questions, but and we'll do a little reflection at the end, some
Yeah.
feedback. Maybe you could share with us though your experience teaching, your primary subject, and what your thoughts are with regard to generative AI, and what has worked, what hasn't worked, what the challenges are for you.
Right. Well, one use case I like most, or I really enjoy, is I build a chatbot and I put it in system prompt and say, your job is to simulate two people. One is an expert on public policy because I'm teaching a general education course on public policy, and actually give the expert name, Jennifer Cooper. And then another role you are supposed to you should play is undergraduate who is very enthusiastic but doesn't know much about the topic. And then your job is to talk to me, and actually I put my name there so they know me, Dr. Simon Wong. And then I put my entire course syllabus in the prompt in Pod.com, so that every time I talk to the chatbot, the first thing the chatbot would say is, "What would you like to talk about today about the teaching the course?" And then I will just talk a little bit, and then uh, Dr. Jennifer Cooper, and then the student will start talking about the point I was making, and then I will also join the conversation, and then there's like a conversation going on. For me, this is a very useful application because without the large language model, if I want to do something like this, I have to find somebody who's actually an expert on this public policy and also some student, and then we can talk. But now with the large language model, they can simulate these people. I can talk to them. It's like a really good way for me to kind of prepare my lessons and develop materials. And once I got the scripts, I can actually put it into a different like HeyGen or some other video generation platform. I can actually create a video out of that conversation. So yeah, so that's one use case I find quite useful. And then there's this I think I was trying to help trying to show this which is a word choice. Yeah, and I made this for my students, so I'm using the free GB ChatGPT. So I put menu here, and they offer a couple of different options. So there's different options here. Yeah, so that's also a use case, and sometimes I also created Trello like to help students write essays. Because sometimes we have to publish write essays for the newspaper, like letter to the editor. So we follow certain steps for like writing outlines and everything. So yeah, so there's quite a number of use cases there. But actually there's some questions I put it here, if anyone want to discuss, we can also talk a little bit like what are the most promising way for customized chatbot to be used? What are the risks? Oh, somebody just joined. Risks and concerns, ways to collect evidence. I think collecting evidence is so important because all these ideas are very promising or sounds exciting, but then before it can be implemented or scared or really make a difference, we have to collect evidence to convince people this is the actually an effective way to support teaching and learning. Yeah.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Wang. And Rich, I'd like to add a few words as well in conclusion before we ask people to give their feedback. But I guess I would just like to say that my lesson from all of this is that, of course, it's not quite there in terms of what is cost free. But even in terms of what is cost free, if we are more humble in our initial goal and we just aim to improve one thing or help with one challenge in our teaching, like, for example, we want our students to have a virtual teammate, but we're still going to check over what the teammate is saying, but it might be helpful for them. Or, like you've said, we can use this to help us plan for lessons where we are not big experts, but we're still going to double check that all the facts are correct. I think there is a lot of use for it. It's just a matter of, I guess, not starting off with something very grandiose and very ambitious right away if it's our first time doing it, and take into consideration the fact that it's still not 100% reliable. But I can say from my own experience, trying out similar things, but now I'm going to take upon myself to try this out as one of the roles of Molik and Molik, and seeing whether I can maybe train a chatbot to take that on for a task, not for the whole course necessarily, but for one task where it's a bit more structured. And I think that I can rely on it. But please, Richa, if you could add some words. And meanwhile, I'll put the feedback form here. It's very short, everybody. Please fill it out when you can and let us know what you think. Please, Richa, over to you for concluding words.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, first of all, I'm so floored because you're from English literature background, and I'm also teaching here. I'm in languages and gender studies, and this is so heartening to see that people from humanities and social sciences they are coming out with such kind of usage of chat GPT or generative AI, which shows that how we are trying, and the discipline is becoming so multidisciplinary, and we are ready to experiment more. And this is, and you are teaching like math, you were giving example of math, and this is like seriously mind-boggling. I would like to ask Professor Pancham Shukla, because I know he teaches math. Do you think you can incorporate this? Because we have already had this conversation long back where you said that you are going to use, I think, Microsoft or something in your university. So, Professor Shukla, do you think you will be able to use something here, what he was talking about, Professor Wang?
Yeah, thank you, Richa. And it was a lovely talk. It was very interesting how we explored this use of the chatbot in various roles. Um, in our university, Copilot Microsoft is
Yeah.
open to students and educators, and we can use that. And students are given choice that use those generative AI tools, but then um, actually account for it, how you used it, and how you improved your work using those things. My interaction with ChatGPT was just to test the mathematical abilities, because what I heard is they're not very good with maths. So in that sense, I think Dr. Wang's approach is quite good to demonstrate that how we can develop maths tutor through the chatbot. When I ask you complicated questions to solve completely, the answer was completely wrong with the chat GPT. So if you ask general questions, let's say, okay, explain me complex numbers, for example, they give you quite a lot of information. But when you say, okay, this is the number I give you, give me the polar form or something like that, then I think they trip over. So when you give the actual numerical data for some complicated things, for simple things, I think it's still okay. So this is something that I'm quite interested in STEM, especially teaching mathematics. But your framework today, you mentioned Maulik and Maulik, taking one aspect of it and refining it, for example, complex numbers, and just focus on that, and then try to develop that with lots of material and see how it works, probably as a student project, and build on that database slowly, topic by topic. That might actually work for me. But it's quite an interesting route to explore. Thank you.